Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Or if it's your first time, welcome to my channel. My name is Marlene and I talk about eating disorder recovery and everything related to healing the relationship with your own body, with food and with movement. And as you can see in the title of this video, today we're going to talk about how your eating disorder is lying to you. Because there's a bunch of reasons and oftentimes we're not really able to see them. And of course, reason number one is because it tells you that you're better off with an eating disorder. And while you're destroying your body, while you're going against your intuitivity, while you're not resting, while you're probably under eating or having circles of under eating and then binging, maybe making up for food, maybe owning food, all these are reasons to not believe your eating disorder. Because from an outside perspective, as a recovery coach and as somebody who has survived an eating disorder, these are all not healthy behaviors. And your eating disorder telling you that you're better off with it is clearly a lie. And yet it can feel like it's so true. And this is because eating disorder is there for a reason. And oftentimes we think that is only to be skinny because that became the main focus of our ED in many times, not always of course, but oftentimes it's way more. Whether it's the fake feeling of control, whether it is suppressing emotions, whether it is handling emotions, whether it is avoiding certain things, the ED serves a purpose. But that doesn't mean that you need the ED to survive. In fact, that means that you have to learn how to get those things from something healthy, how to cope with your emotions instead of suppressing them, how to accept your body the way it is, how to trust your body, how to learn that fake control is very different from real control. Because in fact, being able to be flexible, being able to react to certain situations and to not having to control every single detail, that is real control. Control is not controlling everything through and then if one thing falls apart, having a panic attack. Control is being able to sit with the discomfort. Control is being able to be flexible. Control is being able to be like, oh, I actually had it planned completely different, but I'm still not gonna react in a way that harms myself. So that is where real control comes in. And you can actually make a list for yourself where the eating disorder takes control and tells you that you're in control and what actual control would look like. Another way how the eating disorder is lying to you is that you cannot accept your body if it changes. Because I do know that a lot of people have maybe even tried to recover before and they were just not able to cope with a changing body, or at least that's what they felt like. But oftentimes it's actually either not having the right coping skills, not working on the underlying beliefs, or not giving it enough time. You might have tried recovery before and you might feel like, oh, recovery is not for me, but that is just the eating disorder telling you that. If you try to recover now and you have a coach, you have a therapist, you made any changes, and even if you're just a little bit older now, chances are that it will work way better for you now. But don't believe the eating disorder once things get harder and the eating disorder will be like, oh, this is just not for you. You're so much better off with me, because that's a straight up lie. And the other thing is, I hear so many people saying things like, oh, I see other people in all kinds of bodies and they are beautiful to me. I could just never accept that for myself. That's a very common thing in eating disorders. In fact, I felt that way myself when I was like really underweight and I saw people in bodies that were like literally just bigger than my body. Not saying that they necessarily were bigger bodies, but I also saw people in bigger bodies. And I was like, oh, they look beautiful. I genuinely thought they looked beautiful, but I couldn't accept that for myself. So this is something that I had to learn the hard way through recovery, through going through a phase where my body was a little bit bigger, and to now be in a body where I'm like, I can fully accept my body because I'm so grateful that my body recovered. When a couple of years ago, I could have not accepted my body at this weight at all, or at least that's what I thought, because that was the eating disorder telling me that. You have to think of the eating disorder as a super nasty person that just wants to be part of everything and that just would not leave you. That's basically what the eating disorder is. And so every lie they can tell you to stick around, they will tell you. The big one is that this is all about health. Oftentimes I talk to clients when they're in recovery and they're like, all of a sudden, I'm so afraid that this is unhealthy, that if I'm listening to my mental hunger, I'm eating too much sugar, too much carbs, I'm not eating fruits and vegetables, all these things. And the funny part is that every time when I'm asking them, like, how concerned were you about your health when you were in your eating disorder? In many, many cases, the answer is not at all. It was just about controlling. It was just about getting that exercise in, not eating too much, controlling the body weight, being at a certain body weight. It was never about being healthy. Now, I am aware that there's people out there who have orthorexia, but it actually applies to that too, because orthorexia might seem like it's all about the health, when it's actually a very unhealthy behavior. So for those of you who don't know what orthorexia is, it's like an overly focus on health. It actually was something that my eating disorder history started with. So I like over-exercised and at the same time had orthorexia, where I was like trying to cut out carbs and sugar and honey, and every week I was trying to cut up something else. And I was obsessed with health and like kind of like biohacking, even though back in the days we wouldn't call it like this. But it was definitely not a healthy behavior, because I would be hungry, I would over-exercise, I would not listen to my body. I would in fact actually not get enough energy in my body because I was cutting out everything. But I was telling myself this is all in order to be healthy. And then I had a very long time where health didn't play a role for me, where I was very aware that what I was doing was not healthy, but still the eating disorder was just more important. Then when I entered recovery, all of a sudden I was so afraid to be unhealthy, that I have like too much body fat, that I get diabetes, that I don't know what I told myself. And it was never about that, because again, for 10 years straight, I was not caring about my health. So this was just the eating disorder lying to me and telling me, oh, this is not healthy, you have to care about your health. When in fact, it was actually the opposite. The eating disorder wanted me to go back to something that was really unhealthy for me. Another way the eating disorder is lying to you is telling you that you're not sick enough. Either telling you that you're not sick enough to recover, that's a big one. If I would get $1 every time somebody says that to me, like I don't know if I'm like sick enough to even recover. Maybe I'm even faking my eating disorder. And I'm laughing not because it's actually funny, but because from a healthy perspective, again, this is something where I'm like, this is clearly the eating disorder lying to you. If you're eating, your body, your workouts take over your life, get you to a point where you can't live flexible anymore, where you can't live intuitively anymore, where you cannot rest if you want to rest, or where you cannot have that pizza if you want to have the pizza, then you are worthy of getting help and you're worthy of recovering. I don't care if you have a medical diagnosis or not. There are so many people with either eating disorders or disordered eating who never got a diagnosis, and they are still so worthy of getting help. You deserve to recover, and you're sick enough. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Somebody else's rock bottom doesn't have to be your rock bottom. Just because somebody else ended up in the hospital and you didn't, doesn't mean that you have to take it that far. This is, again, the eating disorder telling you that you have to try and see how far you can go, when this is something that a healthy person would never say or do. I also heard the same thing from clients who are in recovery already, who might have gained weight and who now feel like, oh, maybe it's too much, maybe it's getting out of control, maybe I'm slipping into the other direction now, when they clearly know this is not the case. They know what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to do. We talked about that 100 times. They're very informed about recovery, and still the eating disorder sneaks in and is telling them, oh, what if you're doing the wrong thing? What if this is unhealthy? What if you're now getting to the other direction? Now you have to control again before it gets out of hand. And that is the eating disorder lying to you. You don't have to control anything in recovery. In fact, you don't have to control ever again. I'm speaking from experience. I'm speaking from working with a lot of clients. I'm speaking from working in a clinic. I can assure you, you don't have to control. Whenever the urge to control your body, to control food, control your weight comes in again, it's a big sign for me that this is the eating disorder speaking, not your healthy self, not your intuition. And speaking of intuition, that's another one where the ED really loves to lie to you. And that is when you are afraid of something. Let's say you have a fear food. Let's say you're afraid of stopping exercising, you're afraid of eating a certain food, you're afraid of eating a certain amount of food, you're afraid of not controlling your weight, and you're telling yourself, but this is a gut feeling, right? We're taught to listen to our emotions. Fear is an emotion, I have to listen to it. And in this case, I really have to disagree, because your brain learns to be afraid of something that you're avoiding, which makes sense. Let's say we're living in the Stone Age and I'm trying a berry and that berry is toxic. So I have really, really bad cramps. So I'm learning to avoid that berry. And the more I avoid that berry, the more my body and my brain will learn that this is dangerous. So now every time I see that berry, like an alarm will go off in my head, like, oh, this is dangerous, we're not gonna eat that, because I'm avoiding it. So if you're avoiding certain foods or certain amounts of foods, or avoiding to eat foods without making up for them before or after eating, your brain learns that it's literally dangerous. So if this feeling of danger, of fear comes up now, this does not mean to listen to it. This does not mean this is your intuition. It just means that your brain has to learn something else again. So instead of saying, this is my intuition, this is my gut feeling, I have to listen to it, you have to remind yourself that your eating disorder is afraid of this, and so is your brain, because you avoided it for too long. So chances are that you have to give it time and repetition in order to not be afraid of it again. Another one is, you have to wait to be fully recovered in order to go back to your normal life. This is literally the ED keeping you from making more memories, more experiences, because the more you engage with your quote-unquote normal life, go out again, have fun with friends, the more you will learn, oh, this is what my recovered life could look like. This is what life without an eating disorder could look like. So this will probably give you even more motivation to recover. So of course the eating disorder doesn't want you to go out there. Of course the eating disorder wants you to sit inside and only focus on food and only focus on, the ED and recovery, but like in a way where you're not really experiencing that life outside of an eating disorder. So this is the ED lying to you so that you do not experience those things, and that you, if it goes best for the eating disorder, like slowly go back to it, because you feel like, I don't have anything outside of my ED. And that is actually also another lie that the ED loves to tell people, especially if they spend a lot of time with their ED. You will never have something without me. And it makes sense that you believe that if you have been with an ED for a long time, if that ED didn't allow you to make friends or destroyed friendships or interpersonal relationships. But I can assure you from personal experience and from experience of working with clients that there is definitely a life outside of an ED. You do not know what it is like in order to get started, but you do have to believe that you're capable of building that life. And I do know that some people, based on experiences, maybe even based on traumas, have a very hard time with that. And it's okay to get help. It's okay to get a coach or a therapist that you can work with, that you can create a plan with. Sometimes it's just even about, what could I imagine in the future? You don't have to know what you want in life, but you can like slowly figure out, who am I outside of my ED? Who am I? Who do I want to be? And maybe even look into, what do I want my life to look like? But again, you don't have to know that in order to get started. I hope this helps you, whether you are in recovery already, whether you want to start recovering, because the ED can be so sneaky, and there's a bunch more lies what the ED can tell you. So if you make it this far, let me know in the comments which other lies the eating disorder told you before, or maybe it's still telling you. And let me also know what you think about this video. Maybe you had an aha moment, maybe you were like, oh, this is actually something that I'm thinking of all the time. Maybe it's my ED lying to me. And as always, let me know in the comments if there's other topics that you would like me to cover. At the end of this video, I have more information if you want to work with me. I'm currently having 2 spots open, so let me know if you feel like ready to recover, ready to make that change. And otherwise, I will see you in the next one.